Okay. Well, I see folks are hopping on at the moment, but I want to be mindful of time and get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Janice Caston. I lead marketing here at Dynata. We're thrilled to have you here today to talk a little bit more about QualityScore. As you might know, QualityScore is a critical component of our overall data quality approach here at Dynata. QualityScore is built based on AI and ML technology, and QualityScore can catch what standard industry-related checks might consistently miss. We identify patterns of behavior that might suggest poor quality data related to either fraud or low engagement. And what's more, those respondents that we do flag can be removed live while our projects are still in field, providing a number of benefits. Our presentation today will talk a little bit about the overall inner workings of QualityScore, and then we'll start a fireside chat with our two guest speakers. The fireside chat is really intended to answer some of the questions that we hear most commonly from our customers. And we'll talk a little bit more about industry-related issues as it speaks specifically to quality. So a few housekeeping items for those of you on the line today. This webinar is being recorded. You will be able to watch the webinar right after the presentation concludes, and you'll be emailed a link to the presentation via On24. Second, we do want this session to be as interactive as possible. Feel free to ask any questions that you might have during the presentation, and you'll see there's an Ask a Question box on the left-hand side of your screen. We'll answer as many questions as possible, and if we don't get to your question live, we'll certainly send you an email response back just to make sure that we close the loop with you. So without further ado, let's begin. Here today with me, we have Dr. Tammy Rosner. Tammy is a cognitive science researcher, and she is our Director of Data Quality here at Dynata. Tammy's role essentially bridges the gap between the research science and data quality teams, and she's also someone who speaks very frequently with our clients. Tammy joined Dynata in 2023, and she's been here for about a year now and made a huge impact on the business thus far. So welcome, Tammy. And second, we have Tom Tuccio. Tom is our product manager of QualityScore, and Tom's been with Dynata for close to 10 years now, if not more. He's worked in several product and customer-facing roles in addition to our service team, and has a great understanding of data quality and the tools that we can use to ensure that we're delivering the highest quality data to our customers. So when we have you here today, we want to talk about data quality. Of course, the data quality challenge isn't one that's going away. And here at Dynata, we look at data quality in 4 distinct and key areas. Data quality is much more than respondent quality. It really spans everything that we do for you and everything that goes into a project and or the data that you receive from us. Each of the pillars that you see here on screen play a key role in ensuring the quality of the data that you receive from us. While today we'll focus primarily on respondent quality and the folks that are answering surveys faithfully for us, obviously the way that projects are set up, the service that you receive from us, and then finally our research designs are critically important to ensuring the quality of the data that you receive. We'll focus today on respondent quality, but as you can imagine, when you work with Dynata, we're looking at all 4 of these pillars, and they have an interrelationship to ensure that we're delivering quality data to you every time we work together. And now I'll talk a little bit more about data quality, or I should say Tammy will talk a little bit more about data quality, and I'm going to turn the presentation over to her. Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks, Janice. So as Janice mentioned, we're going to be focusing on respondent quality today. And when it comes to respondent quality, there are 2 major areas that we need to consider. There's fraud and there's disengagement. And so fraud is someone who's pretending to be someone that they're not, and their motivation is mainly to make money, to trick our system and make as much money as they can, more than a standard respondent. Across all sectors, we're hearing more and more about fraudsters, whether they're trying to get our bank information or send us phishing emails. And any industry in which fraudsters can make money is a target. And of course, market research is no exception. We're a lot better now at detecting fraud, and a lot of that is, and a big part of that is understanding fraudsters, how they work, why they do what they do. And for the majority of fraudsters, fraud is a job to them, and they treat it like that. So if you think of fraudsters as companies, just as you have revenue goals, so do they. And just as you need to innovate to survive, so do they. And so because of that, fraudsters are getting smarter and more sophisticated to bypass our automated detection techniques. So for example, fraudsters are more successfully masking their digital identities, which makes it harder for us to connect respondents to real world identities and establish that they are in fact unique users. And so in order to combat that, we've had to implement additional solutions in this area, and such as ID validation. And so now we'll verify who someone is who they say they are by having them upload a picture of government issued photo ID. This is a pretty sophisticated and in-depth system. And so as fraud gets more sophisticated, we need our systems to get more sophisticated to combat that fraud. And as I mentioned, the other area we need to consider is disengagement. And this is when the person taking a survey is a real, honest person, and they're just not thoughtfully answering some or all of the survey. Disengagement could be someone who's momentarily disengaged on a question. It could be someone who's chronically disengaged over multiple surveys or the research process as a whole. It could be someone who is normally thoughtful, but maybe they're just having a bad day, and so they're disengaged on this one survey, but typically provide good responses. Or it could be that someone becomes disengaged because of a bad survey taking experience, and it's the survey itself that's leading to them being disengaged, and on and on. There are so many different ways and reasons that someone may be disengaged on some or all of a survey. And because of that, we need to treat these respondents in a nuanced fashion. We also know that most people are going to be a little bit disengaged as they take a survey, which is normal and expected. We're all disengaged at various points in our day, or even at times during one single task, and survey taking is, of course, no exception to that. And so given the nuances that come with disengagement, we want to make sure that we're not being too overzealous with our removals and looking at respondent quality through a nuanced lens. And I think that we're used to thinking about respondents as being different in terms of their demographics, their behaviors, and their attitudes. But when it comes to quality, we tend to view them as a homogenous group. We expect people to behave and respond to a survey all in the same way, which, definitely isn't the case. And when we do differentiate respondents in terms of quality, we typically bucket them into categories of good quality and bad quality. And if they're bad, we typically talk about them all as being fraudulent. But as we know, that isn't the reality, and that respondent quality is impacted by both fraud and disengagement and can be quite nuanced as well. And while no one thinks that we should allow fraudsters in our data, where do we draw the line with disengagement? Should we clean out everyone who is disengaged, or is there a level of disengagement that is expected and tolerable? And if so, how much is too much? Where do we draw that line? We can't, like I said, we can't expect everyone to be 100% engaged on every survey they take, since that's not a reasonable expectation. And so knowing where to draw that line is really tricky. If we overclean our data or we clean out the wrong people, we do run the very real risk of biasing the representativity of our sample and inadvertently skewing it in ways that we don't understand and can't account for in our analytics. And in addition, that means that we could be throwing away data from good respondents and in essence indicating that we don't value their opinions and the effort and time they give us. And so with all that said, finding the right people to remove is critical, but it can be really hard to know who those right respondents are with manual data review alone. And at Dynata, we make these nuanced decisions with the help of QualityScore, which, as Janice mentioned, is a machine learning model that helps us sort of differentiate all these different categories of respondents from one another. And I'm going to turn it over to Tom, our QualityScore product manager, to walk us through what QualityScore is and how it works.
Thank you, Tammy. Well, as Tammy mentioned, it's important to establish a consistent criteria when evaluating respondent quality. And we developed QualityScore in an attempt to try and bring an objective and measurable method of scoring to some of those nuanced decisions that Tammy was mentioning. So QualityScore is one of our machine learning models, and it analyzes a combination of active and passive data points that are generated as a respondent's taking a survey. We created it specifically for taking action on survey fraud and very low levels of engagement. And it works by taking over 175 different data points into its analyzer model and producing an overall score from 1 to 100 and assigning that to a respondent and grading their overall performance and really determining if their data should be valid for use or not. It catches fraud, it spots suspicious behavior, and it also helps dimensionalize levels of engagement within a survey. And that last piece is really important because, as Tammy just mentioned, we expect certain levels of disengagement within a sample. But QualityScore can really help differentiate between the slight disengagement that we account for in our research and the complete disengagement, which could really result in poor quality findings. Now, with both fraud or disengagement, QualityScore can also help greatly reduce the amount of time that you spend having to clean your data. Some of our clients and our end users have actually estimated that it could save them up to 85% of the time that they previously spent doing manual cleans. And QualityScore is also able to catch and replace fraudulent or highly disengaged respondents in real time before they become part of your data set. So imagine a situation where instead of having to check your data, pull a list of IDs, remove them from your programming, send them to your sample provider, and have them be replaced with lookalike records, all of that was automated in real time using AI and no longer part of your workflow. Now, QualityScore is currently included for free when you're doing full service end-to-end work with Dynata, which means that if we program it, QualityScore is running on a respondent. And we're also using it internally on our proprietary panels as we recruit new panelists and also on behavioral checks within our router. Now, data is meant to tell a story, and we've really tried to design QualityScore to help build a narrative around data quality. Everyone understands that AI is part of the future of research, but AI is also a bit of a black box. It's something that we don't always have a great understanding of what it's doing. We're still learning it. So with QualityScore, we really try to bring some clarity to that. Now, the main value add to QualityScore is going to be the overall score, that 1 to 100 score. And that's where the real time saver is going to be. But there's still always going to be instances where there's nuance and a need for a deeper understanding for you and your customers as to why decisions are being made and what the AI is doing. So to help make those decisions, we actually pass through an additional 3 support variables. And these are really useful, especially for any questionable or moderately unengaged respondents. Each of these variables comes with a pass, further review, or failure flag. And the idea is to really try and make it easy for you to see patterns in your data as you're having to do any residual checks on your data quality. Now, these are summary variables, which means we're taking all 175 plus analyzers and consolidating them down into a much easier to digest story. We start by looking at active behaviors, which is going to look at anything that a respondent is actively doing while they're taking the survey. This is going to include things like speeding and straight lining, but also acceleration as the survey goes on, mouse movement, dwell time on a page, scrolling behavior, and many other things. To further support what someone's actively doing, we also look at what they're actively saying in open ends. This uses our real answer technology and looks for things like gibberish, foul language, copy, paste, hotkeys, and too many answers that are too similar across too many different respondents within your data set. The last component is tech and background detection, and we're able to use a number of analyzers to look for the more advanced type of fraud that you normally associate with bots or server farms. So we're able to actually read things such as machine latency, ping rate, machine settings, geo-verifications, and many more. So I'm going to turn it back over to Tammy now to talk about some of our business results since we've started using this tool.
Thanks, Tom. So as Tom and Janice and I have alluded to, QualityScore is a really important tool within our quality system, and it's been incredibly impactful for our quality overall. We currently have an average acceptance rate of around 97% from data we deliver to clients, which is the highest in the industry based on publicly available data. And this number accounts for ghost completes or jumpers as well, which are at almost 0% within our system. Overall, QualityScore has removed 16 million poor quality survey responses to date, which has helped in reducing time spent manually cleaning our studies. And QualityScore has also helped with detecting answers from generative AI, which I know is a big concern in the industry right now. As Tom mentioned previously, one of the things that we do detect with our open-end responses is copy-paste behavior. And so that's something that we use as a flag for possibly fraudulent responding, and to help detect the use of, ChatGPT, as well as any other, just going to a website and Googling and copying and pasting the answer from there as well. And an exciting development for us is that QualityScore has recently been acknowledged within the industry by ICOM. ICOM is a global association helping data-driven marketers transform their business and accelerate their transformation. And so as part of their recent summit, they presented their Data Creativity Awards, which serve as a means of recognizing groundbreaking achievements in marketing. And of 27 global finalists, Dynata was named the overall winner and won first place for data quality for our submission, QualityScore, rooting out fraud and disengagement with artificial intelligence. It is such a huge honor for QualityScore to be recognized as a powerful tool for data quality, and we are very thankful for this. And I'm going to turn things back over to Janice.
Thanks both. We've had quite a few questions that have been submitted, and we'll get to them. In some cases, you'll hear our pre-prepared questions and questions that we've gotten over time kind of cover the things that that you might want to talk about. So, and we'll answer a few of the kind of chat questions that we've received over the last few minutes at the end of the fireside chat. So the first question that we have or commonly received from our customers is really, what's the bigger issue, fraud or is it disengagement? What is the bigger issue that we're combating with all of our data quality processes and programs? And Tammy, I'd love to hear your take on that question.
Absolutely. And so the answer to this question really depends on where the sample is coming from. So at Dynata, we have many different systems working together to take a holistic, multi-layered approach to ensuring respondent quality. QualityScore is just one piece of the puzzle. It is a big piece. It's an important piece, but there are so many other systems working in tandem to help ensure respondent quality at Dynata. And so in a sophisticated system like ours, fraud is much less of an issue than disengagement. But if someone isn't using a sophisticated approach for detecting poor respondent quality, I should say, fraud can be a big issue and is likely still the bigger issue of the two. But if you have locked down fraud the way we have, disengagement ends up being the more prominent issue when it comes to respondent quality. And so that's why it's really important to follow survey design and research best practices when conducting research. Many people do become disengaged from the research process, especially if they encounter a bad survey experience. And then the survey experience itself or the poor survey quality can impact data quality. And then it can also impact, the respondent pool overall over time. If people become really disengaged from the process over time and stop taking surveys, that can have a really big impact down the road. And so, no matter how good a system is, it can't overcome a poorly written survey, which is why paying attention to the survey is so important.
Great. Thanks for that response, Tammy. The next question is really, as an industry, right? I think data quality is something that we hear about at every conference we go to within the market research space at the moment. It's an issue that's not going away. Taking a step back and thinking about the broader industry, Tammy, I'd love your take on, how we might consider improving overall respondent engagement, especially kind of given the contemporary experiences that people are kind of seeing in the market. And someone in the chat mentioned, competing with TikTok and Instagram and other types of things. So.
Yeah, for sure. It is a really pressing issue. And as I've sort of alluded to, it's really important to be mindful of survey best practices to help improve respondent engagement. Respondents are a limited resource. We need to see those who take surveys as being in partnership with researchers rather than against us or trying to trick us. They're giving us their time, their opinions, their feedback, and we do need to be respectful of that. And so that means that as researchers, it's really important to concentrate on the survey itself. So, things like asking an appropriate number of questions and ensuring you're asking questions that respondents can reasonably answer without too much, asking too much of them cognitively speaking, but then also paying attention to the survey experience itself. So ensuring you're not screening people out really far into the survey, optimizing your survey for mobile, and making sure the survey isn't too long. And as a supplier, we also do think about respondent engagement from the perspective of the router, and to ensure that the respondent experience in the router doesn't lead to disengagement as well. So, we do our best to try to send them to surveys that they're likely to qualify for, rather than sending people to surveys that they're probably going to be screened out of. We all have a part to play when it comes to respondent engagement, and it's important that we work together to ensure that we're not encouraging disengagement in respondents through our practices.
Thanks, Tammy. Now, back to Dynata and our own approach, but thinking about Dynata's respondent pool, obviously we are unique in the way that we have a global first-party panel that we use for our respondents. And if that pool is so clean, why do our customers need to be worried about protecting the quote unquote the survey itself? If our sample pool is clean, why do we need to look at survey measures on the survey level?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think the main answer is that the survey is a huge component of your data quality. And so, you still need to protect the survey itself. As I've discussed a whole bunch, the survey itself can cause disengagement. So having sophisticated tools like QualityScore can help detect and dimensionalize disengagement, which can be really, really helpful in ensuring data quality. And of course, no survey is 100% fraud proof. Some sophisticated fraud can sneak through our defenses, and having tools in place within the survey is another moment where fraud can be caught. So it's sort of like, not having protections within the survey is just giving fraudsters a chance to slip past if they manage to make it in. And so, and there are also surveying artifacts due to sampling practices. We protect against that within Dynata sample. We'll dedupe respondents within our router, but if you are getting sample from multiple sample providers, this needs to be done in the survey as well, since we can't detect a duplicate respondent that's from our panel and then somebody else's panel or some other survey sample provider, for example.
Great. Let's move on to Tom. Tom, I have a few questions about QualityScore specifically. And I'd love to learn more about QualityScore and how it might protect against, some of the new tools that folks are using, including generative AI.
Well, it's a fantastic question, because we all know that Gen AI is a growing problem, and that technology is just going to continue developing and gaining more users. Thankfully, though, QualityScore is able to stay one step ahead of it. I mentioned before that there are many analyzers that are going into the algorithm of QualityScore. And those analyzers give us a chance to not only look at the content that was entered, what was typed into that open end, but also the path of how it was brought into that open end in the first place. So for example, we can see copy and paste behavior if someone's trying to bring content that was generated from somewhere else into a survey. We could also look at if a respondent is likely really answering the question using a bunch of our other analyzers, ranging from how long they were spending answering the question, all the way down to whether their answer was too good or abnormally long compared to other answers that were in the survey, which could be indicative that it was generated using Gen AI. We also are retraining our model on an ongoing basis so that as Gen AI tools continue to grow, our tool continues to learn and grow in the fight against it. Because the bottom line is that with any data quality discussion, we need to be thinking as an industry that we need to look at this through multiple different lenses. We can't just keep relying on the same flags we've always used. The technology is just too sophisticated for that now.
It's interesting that you mentioned an answer can be too good. I hadn't thought about that, but of course, interesting thought there. So another for you, Tom, wondering about the in-survey checks. And I know a lot of our customers kind of have in-survey checks that might relate to, speeding questions, trap questions, or things that they might do on their own or have recommended. Should these be used in conjunction with QualityScore?
Yeah, so QualityScore already includes checks for speeding and straight lining. And this behavior is incorporated into the final score, as well as the active behavior metric that Tom mentioned earlier. Since QualityScore already does have pretty sophisticated ways of looking at speeding and straight lining, it's not ideal to add another speeding or straight lining check on top of those QualityScore checks. And moreover, QualityScore looks at this behavior in a more nuanced way than a typical manual review might. So, as mentioned, sophisticated fraudsters, and particularly those who view fraud as a job, are becoming better at bypassing those standard industry checks. And at this point, many fraudsters know not to straight line or speed through the survey. And so, for example, now fraudsters may quickly go through a survey, but then wait the appropriate amount of time before hitting the submit button. And so this kind of behavior would pass a standard speed check, but it wouldn't pass QualityScore's acceleration check, which looks at those changes in speed throughout the survey taking process. And so as fraud becomes more sophisticated, so too should the checks and ways that we combat fraud become more sophisticated. And so with all that said, you don't need to duplicate speeding and straight lining checks, but you can, of course, still add different checks that are tailored to your survey. So, you can still use a well-written trap question for a B2B survey, because that's not incorporated into QualityScore. And Tom can also speak to how these more tailored checks can be used in tandem with QualityScore.
Yeah, and to Tammy's point, there's a number of reasons why it may make sense to use some of your more legacy checks in your survey. You may have agreements with customers, and certainly you've probably built narratives around data quality with them, and those take time to change. And to be honest, we all know that any automated tool is still going to currently leave some area where there's going to be a need to do a little bit of digging in just to understand what was going on. And having those flags and those automated checks could be beneficial in those instances. Now, a big consideration, though, for QualityScore or any other AI tool is that they work their best when they're able to analyze a respondent's entire path, whether that was a good respondent or a fraudulent respondent. So as an example, let's say you had a survey set up that had 2 red herring checks, and the logic was set to terminate if they failed both checks at the moment of the second infraction. Well, by terminating that person there halfway through the survey, we're unable to see what kind of behavior that type of fraudster would have exhibited during the rest. So if the next cheater is a little more crafty and passes that red herring, that profile information is missing from the model. So as such, we encourage you to continue leaving in any of your quality checks that you've had. We just suggest that you put them at the end of the survey after AI has had a chance to review the whole record and build a full portfolio.
Great. Thanks, Tom. So I'm actually going to kind of switch gears and start looking at the questions that we've gotten from everyone on the call. Again, if we don't get to your question on this call, we will certainly provide you with a response via email. And some of the questions that you've written in are really thought-provoking. So we look forward to kind of getting through a few of them here. The first, and actually I'll ask this of you, Tom, because I know you're the QualityScore product lead. There are a lot of folks that are asking about QualityScore and how it might be applied to sample-only projects. And I'd love for you to give a little bit of information about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Really exciting, actually. We are in the process of rolling out QualityScore to sample-only projects as well as the projects that we're programming and hosting here at Dynata. We're in the process of bringing that to the market right now. And if that's something that you're interested in, I'd suggest contact your local Dynata sales team or get in touch with us through our website. And they can reach out to you and help you understand how to integrate it into your workflow and what any kind of pricing implications or anything like that might look like.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Another question more specifically about QualityScore is, will data around removals be available on projects? And by removals, I'm assuming folks that are identified to exhibit patterns of fraud and or poor behavior. So another question, I think, for you, Tom.
Yep. So as we're collecting data and analyzing it in QualityScore, all those records are stored in the data along with the flags that are associated with them. And having that data at hand allows you to go back and really analyze what decisions were made and why. Obviously, the ultimate end state would be one in which you don't need to go through and spend that time reviewing people who are deemed as poor quality. But again, narratives change slowly. So yes, all that data is available and able to be discussed as we're using QualityScore as the tool.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. And that question is about, looking at our partners. And I don't know, Tammy or Tom, who's best equipped to think about this, but the question is, how does Dynata extend this fraud protection to partner sample? And I know obviously, this is kind of a little bit technical and a little bit as to how we work with partners in building our panel and or our asset. So Tom, I don't know if you've got anything to answer there.
I can take
Okay.
this one, and Tom, if you have anything to add, feel free to hop in. So to answer that question, it kind of looks beyond QualityScore and more at our whole quality system, which is a presentation in and of itself. But without getting too into the details, we do apply many of our parts of our system to partner sample to check for things like deduping. In the router, we'll do digital fingerprinting to make sure that we're not seeing any suspicious digital fingerprints in there. We will use behavioral checks prior to anybody entering the survey. That's the case for partner sample or not. And those behavioral checks, I think Tom mentioned, are subject to QualityScore as well. And then, of course, in this survey, if we're running QualityScore in the survey, partner sample is also going through QualityScore. So, if QualityScore is on a survey, it doesn't matter where the sample is coming from, QualityScore is assessing them. So there are many protections that we have in our system that apply to both our sample as well as third party. And when it comes to QualityScore, we do have QualityScore running on partner sample in a few different ways as well.
Great.
And that's an important call out. QualityScore is sample agnostic. So it will evaluate all sample from any online sources and create a stable baseline, no matter where you're sourcing it from and what partner is providing it.
Thanks, Tom. I know that we're over time and there have been quite a few questions. We will certainly address those in our follow-up to you. Thanks very much to everyone that's attended the call today. If you have more questions and you don't have someone in sales that you can speak to, we do have an info@Dynata email address that can be used. You can also get in touch with any one of us. If you'd like. I do want to mention that we have an upcoming webinar that is going to be scheduled. You'll see information about this in our follow-up email as well. This upcoming webinar will talk about our activation product. And for many of you on the line, you know that Dynata is able to look at survey research as a means by which we're targeting advertising, and we work with many folks within the media segment to do this. But this is more and more relevant as we think about our MRA and clients in particular, because obviously research is a really good way for us to get in touch with audiences that are important and go beyond demographic criteria into attitudinal criteria. So be on the lookout for that. And thanks so much for joining us today.